Hey, I'm Paul Dano, and I'm being forced to talk about myself.
Paul Dano has always been one of those actors who rarely gets the spotlight, but somehow always steals the scene. He's never been the loudest name on a poster, never the kind of performer studios market as the face of a movie, yet audiences walk away remembering him. Whether he's playing fragile, unhinged, heartbreaking, or quietly terrifying, Dano leaves an imprint, the kind of performance that lingers long after the credits roll. This is what I always wondered. Everyone thought about it, but it looks like that's not the case. They say any press is good press. But usually, having Quentin Tarantino call you the weakest actor in Hollywood isn't exactly the endorsement you want. But weirdly enough, that's exactly what just happened to Paul Dano. If you missed it, Tarantino went on the Bret Easton Ellis podcast recently and decided to wake up and choose violence. Quentin Tarantino, one of the most influential filmmakers alive, sat down for the podcast interview and casually dropped what has now become one of the most controversial takes of his career. What began as a simple discussion about cinema quickly spiraled into a storm of debate, frustration, and ultimately a massive wave of love for an actor most people already respected. Tarantino is not new to dropping controversial statements. What he said about Joker 2, Toy Story 3, and the Dune remake has been a point of discussion among fans for quite a long time, but all those things were such that you would find people both disagreeing and agreeing with him. But this time, he dropped a take so hot it actually backfired and turned the entire internet into the Paul Dano defense squad. Here is how one interview made Paul Dano everyone's favorite actor by trying to tear him down. It started when Tarantino was listing his favorite movies of the 21st century. He put Paul Thomas Anderson's masterpiece There Will Be Blood at number 5. High praise, right? Well, there was a catch. He said the movie has one giant flaw. He called Paul Dano's performance as the preacher Eli Sunday weak sauce. The podcast host was also surprised with his comments and tried to defend Dano that he was up against Daniel Day-Lewis. Anyone could have been overshadowed. But Tarantino didn't stop there. He called him the weakest actor in SAG, Screen Actors Guild, and claimed the movie failed as a two-hander because Dano couldn't keep up with Daniel Day-Lewis. His solution? He said Austin Butler would have been better in the role. Yes, the Elvis guy. Keep in mind, Austin Butler was about 16 years old when that movie came out. The comments didn't land like normal actor critiques. They weren't a measured assessment or thoughtful disagreement. They were sharp, personal, and oddly intense, especially coming nearly 2 decades after the film's release. And in an instant, they shocked the film community. Dano isn't some divisive figure or Hollywood outcast. He's widely respected, quietly brilliant, and consistently praised for his emotional nuance and versatility. He's the kind of actor cinephiles admire because he never phones it in, never chases the spotlight, never needs to be the loudest in the room. So hearing Tarantino tear into him so aggressively felt like a slap in the face, not just to Dano, but to everyone who appreciated what he brought to There Will Be Blood and beyond. And calling him the weakest actor in SAG almost felt surreal, especially when you look at the range he's displayed over the years. I mean, did Tarantino just skip his chilling, methodical performance in The Batman? Or how he practically broke audiences in Prisoners, or how he transformed into Brian Wilson in Love and Mercy, a role so demanding most actors wouldn't even attempt it. Even in films where he doesn't have much screen time, like Little Miss Sunshine or 12 Years a Slave, Dano leaves an impression stronger than actors with 3 times the dialogue. That's what makes Tarantino's statement feel so off. You don't have to love every performance Paul Dano has ever given, but calling him the weakest actor in the entire Screen Actors Guild, that's not a critique. That's a dismissal so exaggerated it collapses under the weight of Dano's own body of work. On the other hand, Tarantino wasn't done. In the same breath, he added that he doesn't care for Matthew Lillard and doesn't care for Owen Wilson either. For Lillard, who recently re-entered the mainstream conversation thanks to horror fans and his long-standing cult popularity, the comments stung. He actually responded at a convention, admitting it hurt his feelings because, well, it was Quentin Tarantino saying it. Lillard even added that Tarantino would never say something like this about someone like Tom Cruise, because while he has a loyal fan base, he's not very popular in Hollywood. But instead of damaging his reputation, his honesty only highlighted how deeply loved he truly is. Fans immediately shouted out their appreciation from his iconic turn as Shaggy to his emotional work in The Descendants. Lillard has always been a fan favorite, even if he hasn't always been a Hollywood favorite, and Tarantino's remarks simply reopened that familiar divide. With Owen Wilson, Tarantino's comments were even stranger. He admitted that he once hated Wilson's performance in Midnight in Paris, yet found himself returning to the film and eventually watching him. Still, he concluded with, "I really can't stand him." Again blunt to the point of unnecessary cruelty. He could have simply said that he doesn't enjoy them or their performance doesn't stick well with him, and people would say that fine, but the way he said it, that became the center of attention. But here's the twist. Instead of tearing these actors down, the comments did the opposite. Almost immediately, the backlash was fierce and unified. Directors, actors, critics, and fans came forward defending Dano. Matt Reeves, who worked with Dano on The Batman, publicly praised him. Film critics wrote pieces explaining why Tarantino's remarks felt less like critique and more like derision. Social media exploded with clips reminding people of Dano's best performances: Prisoners, Little Miss Sunshine, The Batman, Swiss Army Man, Love and Mercy, and of course his iconic confrontation scenes in There Will Be Blood. In fact, the backlash didn't stop at defending Dano, Lillard, or Wilson. Some fans and critics also turned the lens back on Tarantino himself, pointing out flaws in his filmography, from accusations of repetitive character archetypes to his long-debated handling of female characters and racial language. Others argued that if we started labeling actors as weak based on one performance, then plenty of moments in Tarantino's own movies wouldn't make the cut either. It was as if Tarantino lit the match, but the fire burned in the opposite direction. In the end, Tarantino's attempt to roast these actors didn't really hurt their stocks. If anything, it proved that while we all respect Tarantino's lens, we don't always agree with his taste in acting. Paul Dano survived the weak sauce allegations, and honestly, he's more popular now than he was last week. Paul Dano is officially the first celebrity to be reverse canceled. The irony is almost poetic. Tarantino tried to highlight a flaw. Instead, he helped shine a light on an artist millions already knew was extraordinary. In the end, the controversy said less about Paul Dano's acting and more about the power of collective appreciation, the subjectivity of performance, and the strange new way film culture operates in the internet age. A single interview didn't hurt Paul Dano. If anything, it made him everyone's favorite. It was a cinematic twist, and maybe that's the real punk rock.